So why don't you dive into a little about, since you're right here, who we are and what we do.
Who is SoundExchange? As Barry said, we collect digital performance rights for over 2,500 non-interactive services. I'd say Pandora, Sirius XM, and iHeart are probably the best known out there, but there happen to be, actually we're up to about 2,700, I believe, services now. So there's another 2,693 services that are not as big as the three that get mentioned a lot. And we distribute the money that they pay in based on the rates set by the Library of Congress and the Copyright Royalty Board. We pay that money out to over 100,000 record labels and artists. So we pay monthly, which is we're the only performing rights, but it's for a PRO. It's kind of a big deal to pay monthly. I know CSAC's in the house, and they do as well at certain thresholds. But if you make over $250 a month and give us your direct deposit information, you'll get a monthly deposit from SoundExchange if you meet those two criteria. So again, trying to understand that artists live, on the road and sometimes month to month, and we definitely want to support that. Once the money comes into us, we have a pretty quick turnaround in our system, and try to get it out the door within about a month and a half at the most.
What are you defining as non-interactive?
Non-interactive is a service, unlike Spotify, where you can call up a song on demand. I want to hear this song, this title, this track, this version of this track at this moment. It's actually, we don't define it, the DMC actually has that definition as part of it that talks about, so they have the Bruno Mars channel. There's a whole litany of criteria that make up what the Bruno Mars channel can do. So it's not more than 6 songs per hour, it's all governed by that.
Okay.
But non-interactive is, it's basically the type of music you want to hear, but not the exact track.
Yeah, got it.
And then we'll get to that on one of the following slides too. We'll show you exactly who some of these services are. Our board is half and half, like we said. 50% is made up of the artist group, and 50% is made up of the record labels. And as you can imagine, they all get along perfectly every day of the year. It's just and once our CEO, Mike Huppy, gets through his day of getting those 18 phone calls, which sometimes differing points of view, we come up with kind of one industry standard that SoundExchange can represent on business levels, on advocacy levels. We really talk a little bit about what we do, but that's who makes up our board. We started in 2000 as a result of the DMCA that I mentioned, and it actually started as an independent organization about 3 years later once we started getting all the data in from the services, and then we're spun off. We're completely an independent nonprofit company now. For U.S. streaming, last year we paid out $773 million. This is real money. This is real money coming in from these non-interactive services. I think we'll show the charts of how that's changed over the years, but this is, we're going to be coming in, even closer to $1 billion this coming year. It'll have those numbers at the end.
And that represented about 16% of the U.S. recorded industry last year, the $773 million. So put it into perspective. 16% and growing.
There you go. So the difference between 2005 from 20 million to 773 million, you can imagine there's been some growing pains that comes with that. I mean, it was subset of artists, subset of services. As the services is multiplied, that's just so much more data that we get in from so many more places, and then we have to reconcile all of that data and make sure that we go out and find all the artists and rights owners that are entitled to those royalties. So that's Barry and my job and our team's job is to make sure once we get the money paid in from the services, and they're pretty good about paying in and giving us that data, we then are responsible for going out and finding exactly where those people live and what their bank account is. And as you can imagine, it sometimes is a little bit tough to walk up to somebody, and I spend a fair amount of time down here in Nashville too. So if I walk up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm here from SoundExchange, and I have money for you," and usually the first line is, "Thank you, but I'm ASCAP or I'm BMI or CSAC." But we have to explain, first of all, it's a whole different pot of gold that you might not have been aware of before. And if you just give us your bank account information, we'll make sure you get it. So it's a little bit of a, trust me, I'm a nice looking person, right? Give me your information. So it's a little bit of a daunting test. It's gotten easier. I mean, the longer we've been out there, the more artists are out there. and then spread the word for us that they're to be trusted. We are real. We paid out $773 million last year. We know what we're doing. It's helped a lot. So that's something that it's a challenge for us, but we really are working hard to get everybody in the system even before that first dime is paid in. Did you have a question?
I just want to understand correctly. This is only for the U.S., right?
This is right now. We're just talking U.S.
Okay.
We can jump into international a little bit. We do actually have reciprocal agreements with 43 different territories now.
Correct.
I think
Right.
So it's changing as things change around the world. So when you sign up with SoundExchange, it's actually a two-step process. You use a basic registration that everybody goes through, and at the very end of that process, they'll ask you if you also would like to be a member of SoundExchange, which essentially gives us the international mandate to collect for you in those 43 other territories. So if your music is being played around the world,
I signed up, well, I started out in Germany, and I put out records in Germany, 4 of them, and I moved back here. And so I don't know how that all,
Are you affiliated with the collective in Germany?
yeah,
Okay.
they control for the world, and then the BMI just does the US and Canada.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
right. Game is probably collecting your royalties in Germany, and I would hope turning them over to you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
and it is, I mean, you can opt to have SoundExchange do your worldwide collections as well. Most people do. A lot, if you are from a different country or, if you signed up for an international collection kind of before SoundExchange existed, then it makes sense not
I
to.
signed up for the SoundExchange, but I don't know if I did the member thing like what you're saying.
Right. It's often overlooked. It's really, we've actually updated the online registration process in March this year. So it's a little bit easier because it becomes the 5th step in the process, and you're really just asked about membership, and then at which point you're allowed to check a box that says collect in all territories, or go through and check the boxes that you would like us to collect in. You have that option. So
Well, maybe after this.
if you want,
Absolutely.
we can go back and check and just to make
Our
sure.
lawyers make us, for a lot of legal reasons, but we're going to be in the weeds, but we don't want to be that far in the weeds. There's just a lot of legal mandates and regulations that require us to have that extra step because we have to, have international harmony with other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Just for clarification, the international PROs like GAMA, they're mostly collecting the master side royalties from their territory.
That's right. And then we have an agreement that they pay that if it's a U.S. artist or a SoundExchange member, they'll pay.
So your BMI or ASCAP would collect the publishing side from GAMA, but you guys would collect the master side from GAMA?
Well, it would be a transaction from GAMA to SoundExchange. So
Right.
you just report that this artist was played and this is how much we owe them. So it's
Right.
sent from PRO to PRO, and then we would pay
Right,
out.
and that would all be reported on, that is reported on the artist's statement.
It would be, yes. Go.
So that's being collected by GAMA over there where it isn't here.
If you
Like
sign
it
up with
falls under
GAMA,
the one organization there, but here you have a couple organizations.
correct.
doing
And
this.
all of them have different, worldwide mandates. And I wouldn't want to speak to kind of, where GAMA collects and pays out in different across the world. But, we have the authority, if you sign up as a member of SoundExchange, to collect on behalf of anywhere you're played in 43 different territories. Conversation, was it? Yes.
Hey, when the U.S. Copyright Royalty Board sets the rate, is that fixed for a certain amount of time?
It is. For each different service, it is 3
Four
years?
years? 5.
It's a period of 5 years. And the good news for the SoundExchange legal team is they're all on different schedules. So we go through these pretty tedious copyright royalty board, and every one of them is its own new fact-finding mission. And every time we go in and argue that the rate should be higher, and the services go in and argue that the rate should be lower, and everybody produces their expert witnesses and economic analysis. And so it's a lot because we'll just get done with say the web one, and then we'll go on to satellite. So, but it's kind of lifetime employment for our legal team because they spend a lot of time up at that building and making these cases.
So that board, are those appointed positions?
They are. They're judges.
Yeah.
They're appointed judgeships, and it's a pretty serious operation. If you haven't it's like a little field trip to Washington sometime. I mean, they sit in the Library of Congress, and they walk in, and you have to stand up and you testify, and it is very kind of a formal procedure.
Yeah.
And when one of these proceedings is going on, I mean, it can take months. So, our general counsel will basically live in that room throughout the whole proceeding.
Are these judges, hip to, the industry climate, and are
You
they
can just end your question.
like
Are they
artist friendly?
They are supposed to have specific expertise.
Yeah.
They usually have kind of an economist. They definitely have like an intellectual property expertise. And so they're kind of complementing each other in how they're addressing some of this. But they're judges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're being appointed by the Library of Congress. So it's not, I would say, their knowledge maybe about the music industry, music itself is probably not as important as kind of the substantive knowledge as to the economics of how the fair market works. That's
Okay.
really where they are.
Yes,
Just on the side.
cool. You're into advocacy.
Advocacy, and Julia, please chime in if we make a mistake or don't. So, our guiding principle, and I just need to read it with some good punctuation. All music creators deserve fair market value for their work across all platforms and technologies, wherever and whenever their music is used, period. And that gets back to that initial point we said at the beginning, where it's all about the listen and it's not about access. If your music is used and people listen to it and enjoy it, even if they don't own it and put it on a shelf, we think that they should be compensated fairly, period. We have a full-time advocacy person in our office. We actually just have multiplied by, we just doubled the size of our advocacy office this summer, we're thrilled to say. And participate in these priorities when it comes to some of the legislative efforts on Capitol Hill, the AM/FM performance right that we mentioned. There was a panel at 11 o'clock earlier this morning that talked a lot about this and kind of the inequities and where they've come from and how much SoundExchange really fights for that, because it would certainly increase the size of our pies exponentially. The second part of the Fair Play, Fair Pay Act, which is in Congress now and getting a lot of attention, is the protection of pre-1972 recordings. And looking around the room, I don't think anybody personally here might have recorded before 1972, but there's been a change in what some of the services have done as part of their practice. They are not federally, legally today required to pay on 1972 recordings. There's a big legal debate about this, and it differs on the federal books than it does in some of the states. But federal law today does not require that digital non-interactive services pay on pre-72 acts. A lot of these artists are still out there, they're touring, they're performing, they're on casino circuits, trying to make a living because they're not getting paid for terrestrial radio, and they're not getting paid for the digital services that actually for a while were paying them and then stopped. We participated in a big launch of a standalone bill last Congress that addressed this pre-72 issue. And we had Carla Redding, Otis's daughter, there, and she explained that publicly that after the services stopped paying on songs like "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay," it's on their services all day long, her revenues, her income changed by about 95%.
Wow.
So I don't know how many of us can afford to live on 5% of what we're making next year, but I certainly can. So you really have to have sympathy for some of these older artists, or in this case their heirs, that were relying on a revenue stream that suddenly disappeared. So under the Fair Play, Fair Pay Act, we would protect pre-72 recordings, and those artists would be paid fairly along with all the others. And again, we talked a little bit of that in detail this morning, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And then the third piece of the bill, and Julia did a great job this morning of explaining this, would just make sure that all of these services would be have the same market value applied to them. That doesn't mean the same amount of percentage, but the same kind of standards as to what the fair market value would be standard across all platforms. So if you're listening to Sitting on the Dock of the Bay on FM radio or a digital interactive service or on Sirius XM, they all would be judged by the same kind of fair market value standard, and that everybody would be kind of competing on an equal playing field. So those are three big priorities that are part of a pretty comprehensive bill called Fair Play, Fair Pay that was introduced into the U.S. House of Representatives back in April.
This is just a little representation of our outreach. We are at a number of different festivals, South by Southwest, Americana here, CMJ in a few weeks, and it continues to be a struggle. I encourage you, if you're an artist, to reach out to your friends and let them know about SoundExchange. It is surprising, though, how still in the artist community, I mean, I'm off to CMJ next week, and I think there are about 240 of the artists that are performing that have revenue streams within our organization set and established already, but they have not yet registered. So,
And this week, I think it's 62 performing artists that are here that have money waiting for them.
right, 62 people that are playing Americana have money waiting for them, and they just have not registered yet. So, a few more examples of what we do, leveraging relationships that we have with different artists to really spread the word on SoundExchange. You'll see more of that in the new year. And I think that might be it. Yes? That's it.
That's us.
That's us.